I, 35 male, grew up in what seemed like a picture-perfect family until cracks began to appear. My parents' marriage was a tale of two worlds colliding. My mother, Laura, who loved the finer things in life and craved luxury, and my father, David, a humble and intelligent teacher who valued education and integrity above all else. While they loved each other deeply, their differing values created tension over time. Laura often expressed dissatisfaction with David's career as a teacher, belittling his profession because it didn't bring in the wealth and status she desired. Unfortunately, my father's modest teacher's salary never aligned with my mother's extravagant desires. Despite David's dedication and intelligence, Laura couldn't see past her material aspirations. As I grew older, I witnessed the strain this placed on their relationship, and it became clear that Laura's desires were leading her down a different path. When I was 15, Laura met John, a wealthy businessman who moved in the same circles and desired to be a part of. The attraction was instant, and soon Laura filed for divorce from my father. David was devastated. He loved my mother deeply and believed in their commitment to each other, but he couldn't compete with John's financial resources and social status. The divorce was a bitter blow to our family. David fell into a deep depression, struggling to come to terms with the betrayal he felt. Despite his pain, he remained a pillar of support for me, shielding me from the family drama as much as he could. Sadly, 3 years after the divorce, David was diagnosed with cancer. He fought bravely, but the illness claimed his life within a year. I miss him every day. Meanwhile, my mother quickly married John after the divorce. John was everything she had ever dreamed of, a wealthy and influential man who could provide her with the luxury and status she craved. My mother embraced her new life with John very quickly. She enjoyed the luxury he provided, from designer shopping sprees to extravagant vacations. They frequented high-end restaurants and private clubs, where Laura would sip champagne with her wealthy friends. When it comes to my relationship with my mother's new husband, well, he never accepted me as part of his family. He viewed me as an outsider and a reminder of my mother's previous life, a life he deemed inferior to the one he provided. He constantly compared me unfavorably to Emily, his daughter from a previous marriage who grew up with all the privileges money could buy. While Emily received lavish gifts, expensive vacations, and the latest gadgets, I often went without. John made it known that I didn't deserve the same treatment, as I had a father who could have worked harder to secure my future for me, and I'm not his responsibility. It was hurtful and demeaning. But Laura always defended John and Emily, dismissing my feelings with excuses like, "She's a girl, she needs these things." I endured years of his snide remarks about my father and his dismissive attitude towards my achievements. From the outset, John made his opinions about my father clear. He often derided David for being just a teacher, implying he was a failure because he hadn't achieved financial success. These comments not only hurt because they insulted my father's chosen profession, but also because they undermined the values that David had instilled in me. Values of integrity, hard work, and the importance of education. When I turned 18, John decided it was time for me to leave. He claimed it would teach me a lesson not to follow my father's footsteps. The most hurtful part was my mother's reaction. Instead of standing up for me or showing any concern, she stood by John's decision. She justified it by saying it was John's way of toughening me up for the real world and being a real man, saying one day I will thank him. Being kicked out of the house was a humiliating experience. I was lost and hurt. But instead of letting it break me, I used it as motivation. I threw myself into working multiple jobs to support myself, determined to prove that I could succeed on my own terms. Through sheer determination and hard work, I eventually started my own real estate company. It wasn't easy. I faced countless challenges and setbacks along the way. But I was driven by the memory of my father and the values he had imparted to me. Over time, my business flourished, and I became well known and respected in my town because now I owned the biggest real estate company in town. My success was not just about financial gain, but also about proving that David's values, kindness, perseverance, and humility could lead to success in their own right. I made it a point to honor his memory every day by living by those principles and by never compromising my integrity for material gain. Recently, my mother, Laura, reached out to me after years of no contact. She asked me to meet, to which I agreed because I was curious about her life. We met in a cafe next to my office. When I saw my mother again after all those years, she looked tired and worried. Her face had deep lines from stress, and her eyes, once bright and confident, now seemed unsure and tired. I noticed she wasn't carrying her usual luxury bags or wearing expensive watches like she used to. It was clear that her life had changed drastically since the days of luxury and privilege with John. Seeing my mother again after so many years brought up a lot of mixed feelings for me. I felt a mix of nostalgia and a small hope that maybe things could be better now. But mostly, it reminded me of the hurt and anger from the past. It was a strong reminder of how her choices had hurt me deeply. Her appearance made me realize how much had changed since we last saw each other. I was asking myself, how could she, being a mother, not want to see her child for so many years? That hurt me deeply again. Anyway, I once again realized she contacted me, but not because she wanted to see me or missed me. She explained that as John's health worsened, he found himself unable to actively participate in running his business. His illness forced him to step back, relying more on his business partners to manage operations. Unfortunately, this dependency became his vulnerability. His business partners, sensing an opportunity, began making decisions behind his back. They misrepresented facts, manipulated finances, and entered into agreements that were detrimental to John's interests. They exploited his trust and compromised his authority, gradually eroding his control over the company. By the time John realized the extent of their deception, the damage was irreparable. The business no longer belonged to him. This devastating loss not only undermined John's financial stability, but also dealt a severe blow to his health and emotional well-being. Emily, my stepsister, who had never had to work due to her father's wealth, was now facing the harsh reality of having no one to rely on for giving her money for her lavish lifestyle. According to my mother, Emily refuses to find a job, claiming she has no skills as she never worked in her life. In a tearful conversation, Laura asked if I could provide Emily with one of my apartments to live in rent-free and offer her a monthly allowance to help her get back on her feet. She justified her request by saying that I was Emily's older brother and needed to take care of my sister during this difficult time. I was stunned by the audacity of Laura's request. Despite the years that had passed, the wounds from John's mistreatment and Laura's betrayal were still raw. I couldn't believe they had the nerve to turn to me for help after they treated me as an outcast and ridiculed my father's memory. In that moment, a wave of emotions flooded over me: anger, hurt, and resentment. I couldn't hold back my feelings. I laughed bitterly in Laura's face, reminding her of how they had ostracized me and made me feel unworthy of their family. I made it clear that I had no intention of bailing them out of their financial troubles after they had shown me no kindness or support when I needed it most. Since then, I've been grappling with conflicting emotions. While part of me feels guilty for turning my back on Emily, who is technically my stepsister, I can't ignore the resentment I still harbor towards Laura and John. Their actions in the past had deeply wounded me, and I couldn't bring myself to involve myself in their troubles now. Not the a-hole. Your mother and stepfather made their choices, and now have to face the consequences. It's not your responsibility to bail them out, especially after they mistreated you and your father so callously. You've built your success on your own terms, and you owe them nothing. Not the a-hole. They treated you horribly, and now expect you to rescue them from their own mess? Absolutely not. You're justified in refusing to help, especially since they made you feel like an outsider in their family. Focus on your own happiness and continue honoring your father's memory. Not the a-hole. Your success is a result of your hard work and determination, not their support. They ignored your needs and belittled your father, yet now they expect your generosity? Stand firm in your decision. You owe them nothing. Not the a-hole. They made their bed, now they have to lie in it. It's not your responsibility to fix the mess they created, especially after how they treated you. You've done well for yourself despite their negativity, and you deserve to focus on your own life and happiness. Update. It's been a while since I last saw my mother. Recently, I found out about John's passing through a family friend who reached out to me. He told me John had been very sick for some time. Finding out about John's death brought mixed feelings. Relief that the source of so much pain was gone, but also sadness for Laura and Emily, despite everything. John's death marked the end of a tough time for us. I also found out that my mother is struggling to cope with John's death and the financial problems he left behind. She is depressed because she is no longer able to afford her lavish lifestyle, and also she is on the verge of losing her house because her and stepsister kept living above their means after John lost his business. So, yeah, I guess karma came after both of them. I don't wish that on my mother, despite all the pain she has caused me. It's sad, but I believe everyone has to face the results of their choices. Laura and Emily are learning this now, and it's tough for them. Me, female 34. My husband, Hunter, male 37, suffered from fertility problems. We recently decided to get a surrogate who's a friend of a friend. We were busy getting everything done legally. We already had a contract in place. Plus, our surrogate is a respectful, kind woman who's been keeping her part of the contract intact. But it's Hunter who's starting to act strange. I've noticed that he's been focusing all his attention on our surrogate, like skipping work to visit her or get her things she didn't ask for, chat with her all the time on social media, and also constantly offering to do things for her like drive her places, and sometimes even invite her out or offer to repair stuff for her. She complained to me about this and even told me about things he's been doing that I didn't even know about, like bringing her gifts. I tried speaking to him about what this looks like, but he said that he's doing what he's doing for his son and not her. Still, I asked that he tone it down and respect the woman's space. He got mad at me and accused me of being jealous of the woman who's carrying my own child, and said that this makes me look bad. I said our surrogate is the one who complained about his behavior, and he said that this wasn't true. Apparently, this made him somewhat angry, so I gave him time to cool down a bit. Yesterday, our surrogate called me saying that Hunter came over and told her guests to leave. I asked why, and she said that he wanted to show her the $9,000 car he bought for her. I was shocked. She said that she declined the car and asked him to leave, but he started arguing with her about using public transportation and risking our baby's well-being. I was fuming. I called him demanding he get home, and he did eventually. Once he got back, I picked a fight with him and yelled at him saying that he's been nothing but overstepping, disrespectful, and inappropriate towards our surrogate. Again, he explained the car wasn't for her, but to ensure that the baby is safe. I told him to stop disrespecting the woman and stop using the baby as an excuse to stomp all over her boundaries. He ranted about how he was just trying to make this work and that I should do the same, if not more. He even accused me of not loving our son as much as he does. But this isn't the way. And putting $9,000 for a car without telling me? He left the house for a while, then came back and refused to speak to me. I might have been hard on him. He might have just been oblivious, so I'm less sure seeing his reaction now. Not the a-hole. This is upsetting behavior. It's one of two things. He has a crush on her, or he thinks he has a right to police pregnant women's bodies. It's inappropriate regardless. You should quietly assist her in getting an attorney to draft a cease and desist letter to him. You may or may not get the baby, but frankly, I'm not sure your marriage, specifically just your husband and his odd behavior, none of your doing, is in a place to need a baby right now. Not the a-hole. Reading that creeped me out on a deep level. He sounds like a stalker that's obsessed. Does he not realize that stressing her out by being intense and domineering could harm the baby? He needs help and possibly a restraining order. Me and my husband are desperate for kids. We both knew we wanted them when we got together, and that hasn't changed. We've been trying for 2 or 3 years now, and we finally bit the bullet 8 months ago and went to get tested. The results left me really shocked. Long story cut short, it turns out my ovaries never developed properly in the womb, and so I don't have any viable eggs. Obviously, we were both really upset. There is nothing wrong with my uterus though, and so IVF with donated eggs is very much an option, and we would get 3 free goes on the NHS. As I have an identical twin sister, with 2 kids of her own, so she clearly doesn't suffer from the same mutation as I do, the obvious option to me was to ask her to donate her eggs. I have nothing against adoption or using donated eggs from a stranger, but I have always dreamed of carrying and having a child that is mine, per se, if that makes sense. My sister is more than happy to donate her eggs to me. We're very close, and she even offered as soon as I broke the news. My husband, though, is against this and wants us to use a stranger's eggs and his sperm instead. He says it would be too weird to use my sister's. I do understand his point of view, and obviously he has to be comfortable with whatever route we take. But to me, it's so disappointing. I'm infertile, and I'm lucky enough to have a sister whose eggs are genetically identical to what mine would have been. If you DNA tested her children, for instance, it would be virtually impossible to tell which one of us was the mother. To me, this is a chance to have the child I've always dreamed of with my husband. I have no idea how to proceed here. Would be very grateful for advice. What the hell is with the comments in this thread? Can no one feel for the husband? Is he not entitled to be weirded out by the situation? Every time he will see that kid with his aunt, this will be in the back of his mind. It makes sense to use the sister's eggs from most points, but his feelings are valid. OP should suggest some counseling. Can you explain what his argument is? I'm having a hard time offering you any advice because you really don't say why he doesn't like the idea. I agree with you for whatever that's worth. The child would be genetically yours. It's really difficult to understand what his problem with this might be. His only point really is that he feels it would be weird, and it would feel like he's having a child with my sister rather than me. He says he wouldn't feel comfortable fathering a child with somebody else who he knows, and who the child would grow up knowing. From a genetic perspective, your identical twin is 100% the same as you in terms of genes, plus or minus some minor epigenetic differences. He may as well be using your DNA. Could be a talking point you bring up. I've been with my boyfriend, 35 male, for about 4 years now. Things have been great, and we were talking about getting engaged in a few months. He's known his ex, 35 female, since they were around 14 years old. They started dating when they were 15. They dated for about 15 years and were engaged for about 4 years. He broke up with her because he said he wasn't in love with her anymore and wasn't happy. He didn't have the best family life growing up, and she was his support and constant through life. Apparently, she has a lot of reproductive problems. She only has one ovary, and it's cystic, and she has endometriosis. According to my boyfriend, it has been her life dream to have a baby of her own. He says that he continually put it off while they were together because he just wasn't ready. But she doesn't have a boyfriend or husband right now, and her doctor told her that if she doesn't have a baby soon, then she will probably never have one. He says that she didn't want to have a stranger's baby. Through a series of events, I found out a couple weeks ago that he had donated sperm to a clinic for her and that she had already had an embryo transferred. When I confronted him about it, he said that he didn't tell me, 1, because he was afraid that it would upset me, and 2, he didn't think that it concerned me. He said that he did it because he feels like he owes her and that he's the reason she doesn't already have a child, so he feels bad. He has apologized and tells me that he has told her not to use the remaining embryos. He has also told me that the first embryo transfer was not successful. He tells me that it's not that big of a deal and that I'm being ridiculous for still being upset after he apologized. I told him that this is almost on the same level as cheating, and he says that it's not even close. Please help. Am I being ridiculous? Is this really not that big of a deal? He gave another woman his baby and then said it didn't concern you? On what level is this appropriate? This is ridiculous. Seriously, how is this someone you want to spend the rest of your life with? Run, now. What an absurd. Look, I consider myself a very modern and forward woman. And reading your post, I believe this is even worse than cheating. It's something you will have to deal with till the end of your life if you stick to this guy. Also, this is not just a simple thing to do. It's a lot of talking. Unless your boyfriend is a complete idiot, he knew what he was doing since minute 1. It's a huge red flag. My trust would be broken after knowing something like this. You are not crazy, and don't let him think you are. I'm so sad now because we're such a good match, aside from his time management with me, and it really makes my heart hurt from it. My boyfriend has his own apartment, very active in life, and has done a boatload of things already, and is a very, very sweet and romantic person when we do spend time together. That's great, and I love ambition in a partner. But there are 2 major problems going on, and I hate them, and am considering even giving an ultimatum with a deadline. Tell me if it's a good or bad idea. Or if I should leave him and tell him unless he makes changes, I'll come back or cut the relationship off. Basically, for about 3 years, he's been taking care of a neighbor's kids in the same apartment building. He told me that he babysits and helps her out because he loves babies and children, and it's fun for him. He had S with their mom twice. I didn't know him back then. He said at the beginning, but doesn't feel connected to her, and turned down a relationship with her when she wanted to have a relationship before we even met. I'm pretty fine with him having S before, because I wasn't around, but that kind of weirds me out when he can be around her kids often and not feel romantic with her. Even when he doesn't know I'm watching, I see that their relationship isn't romantic at all, and he acts uninterested. She's a single mom, but the dad moved to another state and helps her out with money, but she still is busy with work. I live with my parents and have a good job. He does cute things with the kids often, Devontae and Remy, and my ovaries explode, which makes me feel worse because I feel like he'd be a great dad and we could have a great family. The problem is that the time he takes with the kids often cuts into our relationship time. Sometimes I come over on Friday in the evening to spend time, to have S, eat together, go out, or something fun, and he instead is playing with the little kids. The little girl likes to play dolls or make Play-Doh food and just wants him to watch, and she just plays by herself. And the other one likes to build things with little kid electricity kits and is learning to make code projects on the computer. So he's busy doing things like that until their mom comes back around 8:30 p.m., and then they go to their room and to sleep. He makes things for them like food and does fun activities with them like take walks together, exercise, teaches them a language, etc., which I love and don't mind, but they take up so much time. When it's not the kids, it's work. When I stay over, we get to sleep at about after 10 p.m., and I hear him get up at like 1 or 2 at night. That's insane to me. He does his morning routine at that time, and then leaves for work at like 5 a.m. His friends come over and they do work together in the living room and wake me up from the noise or laughter. Other times, he leaves at like 3 a.m. to go play soccer with his friends at the park, or basketball, or spend the day reading or learning something. He does that every single day when I'm there, and he says he does it even when I'm not there. That drives me crazy, and I hate how he can make time to work more, or go play with a ball in the middle of the night instead of making time with me during the day. I don't mind the time he spends with the kids, or with their mom sometimes. I don't mind him waking up at night or working a lot. I mind, though, that I don't feel like a priority. I don't need to be the number one thing in his life, but I think a partner needs to be pretty close to number one. I brought up how I wanted to go to France this year, and he said that he'd like to go too, but may have to postpone it for about a year to finish the things he needs to do this year. About work. I asked him why he works too much, and he said something like that, I work hard every day because I love it, and because I think that when you're young, you're obligated to work, and when you get to an age that you feel like you're not young anymore, that's what you worked for. Anytime I ask him to make time for me, like for a freaking Sunday together, going to a museum or the park together or something, he says that we can do it soon, but never gives a date. I told him a lot of times already how he needs to balance the kids, me, and work if he wants this relationship to work, and he said he makes time for what's important. I got so upset because that really hurt, but I never told him. I just left to the bathroom to shake what he said off because it really hurt. I don't think he was trying to be rude, and I think it probably came out wrong, but it really damaged me for a while. He said that like 7 months ago. I don't know if I should try or what. I was even thinking about telling him that he needs to limit his time with the kids to little to nothing because I don't want to be in the back seat of his life. That's not fair to me. If he wants to be with the kids, he can schedule maybe a day or for a month to be with them and prioritize me more. Or maybe we could work something out. But I really can't see him having enough time for his personal life and spending time with me with the kids in the picture. I love the kids, and sometimes we'll play with them or cook for them, but they consume so much time. We can have kids, and I'd be happy if he spent that much time on me and our kids. That's why I don't understand why our relationship is like this. Also, the woman makes me a bit uncomfortable. I haven't seen her do anything like flirt, but that bothers me how he has to basically be around her and in her life after they had a short stint. I don't know how men might see a relationship like that, but I don't like it. But at the same time, it's not a deal breaker to me. What relationship? It sounds like you are the only of the two of you that actually thinks you are in one. Look, despite how incredibly sketchy that seems from an outside perspective, It's unclear why you're with a guy who'd rather be playing father to someone else's kids and hang out with their mother than to make time with his girlfriend. If you aren't just a side piece, then I think at the very least you're not dating a guy who has the priorities you need in a partner.